Hey, everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business Live. Looking forward to talking with Cory Hymel. Cory, it's great to connect with you. You are with Gigster and VP of Product and Research. Looking forward to talking to you because we're going to get into some really good topics that I love talking about. You're basically, with over 800 engineers, you help startups of Fortune 500 companies unleash human cloud-driven innovation at a global scale. And so before we get started, I'm a business coach, and I work with people all over the globe who are successful and stuck. I get them unstuck. I love this podcast because I get to have guests from all over the world and help people get unstuck, and people learn through story. So I always like to kick off by asking you, what's an area that you've been stuck in that you have recently gotten unstuck?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I like that one. Where we've been really focused over the past 10 years is understanding how, what's the psychology behind distributed and remote teams, and how do you kind of bring them together and give them superpowers with technology to be successful. And we've been kind of researching for a while the concept of kind of continuous global development. Some people call it follow the sun. Some people call it 24/7 development. It was tried a number of years ago by IBM, Infosys, and a few other ones, and it failed. It failed miserably, right? And the whole concept is that the way that companies operate, and more specifically how software is built, is very inefficient. In that you typically have a team, they work on it 8 hours a day. They go home, they go to sleep, and they come back and keep working on it. And the world never stops. The planet never stops spinning. And with where we're at today, we believe that there's no reason that the problem should never stop being worked on, or the work should never cease. And historically, this has been really, really hard to do. And we've been trying against it for a number of years now, but we recently have had a moment of clarity, or a moment of becoming unstuck. Because one of the big challenges with handing off work like that is capturing context and capturing data so that the incoming teams can have full reign over, or full understanding of what was worked on it in the previous kind of tranche of teams. And we found that AI has become really, really helpful in that kind of problem. And just to like high level, kind of break it down, is that so when you look at doing like planetary level development, we break it into 3 groups that are placed around the world. And as the world spins, that work continues to go all the way around. And the problem where we were really stuck before was that when one of those groups passes it off to the next group, and they, group A goes to sleep, if group B has questions or doesn't understand context of what was going on, all of the work gets put on hold until, the world comes back around in there. And what we found is that, with large language models, and specifically kind of piloting with platforms like ChatGPT and through their API, as well as a lot of data aggregation through video calls, through AI generated notes and documentation and code, is that you can kind of carry that context digitally outside of the human brain all around through these teams, and they can continuously access and understand what the previous team was maybe asking questions about, what they were thinking kind of as they were problem solving. And it's been a really big breakthrough. And that's a huge kind of like unstuck area I think that we've been really happy with recently.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. And I would think that as you dive into, and I love what you talked about as far as understanding the psychology and the energy of how to kind of, what I'm hearing you say is take the human emotion and the why and the energy behind something, the frequency, the vibration in which it was worked on, and figuring out a way how to transfer that in real time so people can actually pick that up. And I think that's something that a lot of companies are going to be trying to figure out, right? It's how to kind of find that that continuum and that flow where where you can pick up and kind of really get and sense what the person was thinking and doing. But that's going to be interesting as the world evolves. Let's kind of dive into that, talking more about the psychology, and what role does AI play in that, right? Because sometimes AI feels incredible, sometimes AI feels generic, sometimes AI feels custom, sometimes AI feels like plagiarism. So so where does AI, I don't know if we necessarily need to talk about where it fits today, but where does it fit as AI evolves?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the way that we look at it, and the way that I believe history, or history will remember this kind of age of tech. It's kind of when we're switching from having technology work for us, and more having technology work with us. So that the role that we see of AI and really kind of like broader tech uses is that they're meant to kind of supplement and work alongside you, right? And they're not meant to be intrusive. They're consistently value adds, and it's less of you kind of in there turning a wrench, which is how we see software used today.
Yeah.
And more of these models and these platforms being able to kind of co-pilot and sit in the seat next to you.
Yeah, it's as a business coach, I work with C-level execs, owners, managers, salespeople, solopreneurs, Fortune companies, and when I'm working with clients, I'm always asking a lot of questions and listening for the loose screw, and that's what I feel like you're talking about right now. It's like just paying attention to the loose screw and how we can kind of just co-pilot together, because the next person sees the loose screw that the other person doesn't see or doesn't realize, and how to make something a big impact with something small.
Yeah, 100%, right. And that's what I think is really different, and like I think a good use case that had come up recently from a client, right, is that, so if you look at the way that like, and this might be a little like finer grain, but the way that typically projects are ran right now is that you have a human that sits kind of in the management seat, and they might track issues or progress with like a Jira or a Kanban board, right? And if something goes awry, it's up to them to kind of shift everything around and make sure that the new dates are up there and all of this. And what's interesting is that this new kind of technology, and where we believe that AI sits, is kind of in this passive data gathering, almost like what you do. It's there to to listen and to learn and to see where there might be potential roadblocks, and then if there are, or some complex problem arises, they're able to actually support you in creating solutions for it. And those solutions are innovative, they're kind of new, right? They're generative, and that's what we think is really, really kind of powerful for all of this. And it's almost like what kind of Steve Jobs's vision for the phone was, is that it should it should transcend. You should never realize that you're using the device. It should just provide value back to you in some way, shape, or form.
For those who watch this on video, they'll know what I mean by this. But for those who are listening, your background looks like, a galaxy, right? It's a very cool studio. And so, but if you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes, it's just, take my word for it, it's a very cool background, and it's very, very cool. But what you're talking about, everything you're talking about right now, so Gigster, you guys you're a smart software development company that you combine top developers, you take designers, you take product managers, you layer in artificial intelligence to build a project. So to many, that seems just out of this world, right? It's like, how do we kind of like bring in the law of proximity for a company to say, okay, this is what it means to me right now, and here's the next step of how I get into this, evolution of my business. So what's that first step?
That's a really good question. And what we advise, and because this is how we've been successful, and how we believe, or how we've seen some of our customers be successful, is that, technology is in a really in a really odd state, in that, your employees are exposed to features, functionalities, use cases, kind of in their personal world, and then they bring those, whether consciously or subconsciously, into the workplace. And so when we look at companies and they ask, like, how do we start? How do we start with AI? Like, what's the first
Yeah.
step? Really what we always advise is, is to understand how your employees are going to use it. And, most, and to be, to be facilitators for that, not roadblocks. A lot of employees in companies now are already, going out and signing up for a personal chat GPT account, and they're putting your business data in there to help them become more efficient. But you have no visibility, you have no control, and you have no understanding of how they're actually using these tools. And the first project that we typically build for a lot of customers is really just a wrapper around ChatGPT's open AI APIs. And what it allows companies to do is get visibility into one, like, what type of queries, what type of questions are your employees asking these models? Like, in what ways are they using it? Are they finding it helpful? And as a sidebar, second of all, is that OpenAI's data privacies are much more tighter and I would say advantageous via the API, rather than just letting people sign up on their personal account. So I advise every business to do that and not just let people go out to it. But what that allows you to do is you get an understanding of your employee, but really they're your customer, right? And as they continue to use this, and as you help them, and are a facilitator of this new technology, you can then start to plan out your larger roadmap.
Yeah.
I don't know of any instance, and this is probably, the pipe dream that, a McKinsey or an Accenture will tell you, is that we'll come in and, for $5 million, we'll tell you what your next 10-year AI strategy is going to be. Like, that is the biggest, smoke and mirrors that I've ever heard. The pace of change that technology happens, and as quickly as it does, it's impossible to plan that far ahead. But what you can do, it's impossible. But but what you can do is be a good, product company in that sense, in that you listen to your customers, understand customers as in your employees, understand how they're using this technology, and then quickly iterate and ideate and build solutions that, one, adapt to their needs within your business, but also adapt to what they're experiencing in their personal lives and outside of your business. And linking those two is what drives adoption, right? And when you have adoption, then you get all the upside of efficiencies, reduced cost, higher outputs, higher quality outputs, et cetera, et cetera.
And one thing I would throw in there is it's really hard, because it's really hard to forecast, I think, out a 3-year business plan in general for anything, because the technology that's being created, every single year is what's going to get everybody further along in years 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, et cetera, ... Right. But so one of the things I would recommend, just on that point, then, community, is making sure that you're having your quarterly meetings, you're having your monthly meetings, you're looking at your pipeline on a regular basis. You have a live business plan that you're looking at and updating it, because you're always forecasting out 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, based on indicators that you and your company are tracking, so you can get ahead of real time when it comes to change. So thank you for that. You talk about the adoption. One of my favorite books I read 20-some years ago, Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore. I don't know if you ever read that book, but it's all about kind of like a bell curve, and it talks about the early adopters to the late adopters, and it takes a lot longer to get the early adopters using something. One of the things I see and I hear a lot is companies, they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars on technology, but getting their people to actually use it is sometimes very, very difficult. I think there's a multitude of reasons, but what do you think the reasons are that you know, if they didn't have it, the company would say, people would say, oh, if you had that technology, I'd use it all the time. But then they get the technology and don't use it. So how do you get your employees to actually use the technology that will help them be more effective, more efficient, grow their business, increase conversions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a good one. So my strategy, right, in the product seat of getting people to adopt new technology, and a lot of this was born out of like firsthand experience during you remember like the bring your own device movement, BYOD, back in probably like 2009 to 2012 span, when companies went from we will issue you smartphones, you have to use these, it comes with your email app and maybe a couple other really kind of janky apps that we built, and this is your phone. And then the iPhone launched, and consumer expectations of what they can do with a phone all of a sudden exploded. Next thing you know, over the next few years, companies went through this kind of crisis point of, do we let our employees bring their phones? Do we not? And then, as that started to happen, the customer, again, when I say customer, I mean employees, right? Their expectation of what an app should look like, what it should do, everything from the capabilities to the response time to the care put into the UI and UX, all started to change, and they became more informed when it came to tech. And so when we look at how to drive adoption within your workforce of new technology, what I always kind of one of like the mini threads, right, is to always look at how are they doing something similar that they've already adopted into their personal life. And how do you take that? There's this fascinating concept called mental schemas, and there's a book called Made to Stick, which basically basically outlines the mental hack to get people to understand and adopt new things. And this concept of mental schema is that people have a lot of preconceived notions of what they expect. They may not know it or not. And so when it comes to building product or new product to get your employees to adopt it, one of the best ways is to look at, what are those previous mental schemas or models that they already have. And, for instance, like with AI, that might be, how do they use Alexa at home, right? Or how do they do text to speech here? Or how would you see using or interfacing with this tech in your personal life? And you use those as data points when you go to kind of design your products and integrate it into their workflows. And it's never, I don't know if it's ever been as easy as we want it to be. But that is when I see people that fail, they designed in a box and then said that people, I think that the biggest fallacy that a lot of companies have is that my employees will use this because they work for me and I pay them and I tell them to use it. And that is not how the people work.
Yeah, right. I think companies also need to spend a lot more time breaking down to the simplicity of how to use the technology. Most people don't like change. Most people are scared of technology. And really reverse engineering to the simple steps on how to use it, and then train in small spurts, right? So sometimes they have like companies will have a 2 to 3 hour training and then that's it. It's like you got to train 10 minutes or 7 minutes twice a week for the next year, right? And where people can just learn one little thing at a time instead of big, and then they just forget about it. So I appreciate that. Let's do a quick speed round. A TED Talk, a book, or an article that's had the biggest impact on you?
The recent book, Age of AI, by Eric Schmidt and Henry Kissinger and a couple other people. 100, like everyone should read that book.
It's called The Age of AI.
The Age of AI. I think it was published in like 2020, so it's also like relevant. It's not like back from the 70s or something of AI.
All right, good. I'm gonna check it out. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
The best career advice I think I ever got was that you should always either be earning or learning. Either is fine, both is best, but the moment you're not doing either, like, quit.
Yeah, good. I love that. Finish this sentence. One thing everybody needs to do to get more knowledgeable about AI is?
Use it.
Okay, good. I would recommend Think Community. You've heard me say this before. Use it for 1 minute a day, right? Just kind of build the muscle. One thing you wish you would have learned in high school and college that they didn't teach you.
Finance.
I hear that a lot. Last question. Who's your ideal client, and how can people connect with you?
Ideal client is, anyone that's looking to innovate and move fast and needs, a team to do that. Whether that's an AI, blockchain, IoT, mobile, anything that is a cool, fun, interesting, hard problem, we want to work on it. Best place to get in touch is usually LinkedIn. So you can just search my name. I should show up. I think I'm the only Cory Hymel on there.
All right.
Or check out our site, Gigster.com.
That's great. Cory, I appreciate you being on the show. This was great. And Think Community, always appreciate you as well. As a business coach who works with people who are stuck, get them unstuck all over the globe. Again, I love having this podcast so I can have guests like Cory on to talk about how you can get unstuck. And you talked a lot about a lot of things today that are really, really important. But, I think one of the things that I'm going to extract when it comes to AI is just use it. It's amazing, how many people I still talk to today who don't know about ChatGPT or really aren't familiar with the Jaspers or the different AI tools. And there's a lot of businesses that also don't allow it in kind of within their firewall. And I get that. That's okay. Because you got to keep things, at a certain standard, but still on a personal level, play around with it, check it out, see how it's gonna, see how it can help you. I personally love to use it almost like as an assistant to help me think of things, so it's like where I just have an idea about something and it'll help me just expand my thinking, and I love it. I love it a lot. Cory, this was great. Tell everybody one more time where they can connect with you.
Yeah, LinkedIn, just Cory Hymel, I think is the phonetic way that people will remember it, or Gigster.com. Just tell them you heard me on Think Business Live, and we will give you some love.
All right. And you can reach me, everybody, at jondwoskin.com. Cory, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Of course. Thank you.